Handy Drums version 2.0. E-Drummer mode. The E-Drummer mode is explicitly made for drummers using electronic drum sets to trigger Handy Drums. It has several functionalities that facilitate natural performance on an electronic kit. The E-Drummer mode can be enabled from either the mapping or settings panel, and when done so, several things happen. Snare drum split. The snare drum, generally mapped to D1 and containing the full range of the instrument, is split into snare head mapped to D1 and rim shot on E1. If another instrument was previously mapped to E1, that instrument gets moved to a new note. This change is immediately visible on the key mapping panel and on the visual keyboard. Variable hats for single zone pads. Before we go into variable hats for single zone pads, let's briefly look at what variable hats are and how to use them. The variable hats are always available by default without having to switch the E-Drummer mode on and are mapped to G0 and A0 for tip and edge hi-hat notes. You move from the tightly closed to the various stages of open hats by using the CC4. The CC4 is generally reserved as a foot controller in E-Drum modules. To use the variable hats, you need to ensure that all hi-hat articulations are sent to only those two notes, G0 and A0. You can set the MIDI output for different articulations within your drum module to output only those two notes. Refer to your drum module's manual for information on how to do this. Alternatively, you can use the additional blank mapping inside Handy Drums to assign all hi-hat notes sent by your drum module to only hi-hat tip and hi-hat edge. Once that is configured, the foot controller will direct variable hi-hats to play from tightly closed to fully open, dependent on the foot pressure. Since tightly closed hats are achieved when the CC4 controller is in the range between 127 and 107, you need to ensure that your module outputs values all the way to 127 when the hi-hat pedal is fully pressed. You can see the values your hi-hat controller is sending in the Variable Pads Controller Curve table on the Settings panel, presented as a vertical line moving on the horizontal axis. The horizontal axis represents the CC4 values being sent into the Handy Drums plugin, while the vertical axis represents the values that are passed into the plugin's internal MIDI modules and samplers. Each axis goes from 0 at the bottom left corner to 127 on the opposite end, respectively. If your drum module is unable to send values for the full range of CC4 from 1 to 127, you can use the Variable Hats Controller Curve to modulate the incoming CC4 values so that the highest value that your controller sends becomes 127. When the hi-hat controller is fully pressed, it will indicate the maximum value it is sending out of the drum module. Create a nod by clicking on the vertical line right near its top. You will notice that the curve has changed and is now scaling all incoming CC4 values so that the highest value sent from your drum module is equivalent to 127. As long as your drum module continuously sends the CC4 values with the movement of your hi-hat controller, you can now use any E-pad to trigger the variable hats, be it a single zone or dual zone pad. If you are using a single zone pad for your hi-hats, toggle the switch for the variable hats to a single zone, and adjust the edge versus tip threshold to suit your playing. Based on how hard you hit your single zone hi-hat pad, the edge or tip hats will be played. Harder played notes are dedicated to the hi-hat edge, while the lower velocity notes trigger the hi-hat tip sounds. Pretty awesome, isn't it? Hi-hat foot splashes. Handy Drums contain hi-hat foot splashes on note B1, which can be triggered in any mode. When in the E-Drummer mode, you can also trigger hi-hat foot splashes with your hi-hat foot controller in the same way you would on an acoustic drum set. Since the triggering of hat foot splash relies on note 44 being sent by your drum module, in addition to the CC4 movement, your drum module must support foot splashes for this to work. We developed and tested this functionality on Roland's top-of-the-line TD50X module, and compatibility with other drum modules is unknown at present. This is just one of many fantastic features of the world's most practical and best-sounding virtual drums. If you haven't yet experienced the latest version of Handy Drums, head over to Goran Groove's library and get a free trial now. For other features and functionalities, check out our other videos. Thanks for watching.